me since I've been gone. And so as these years roll on, I always come back to where I belong, my hometown And have you noticed every way I've changed? 'Cause to me you simply stayed the same. But every time I walk away, you leave a little piece of you inside of me. It made me who I am today. My hometown life, its spirits inside. My hometown's alive and filled with the light unfading that I've created. My hometown's I walk around these streets and stare at the things that remind me of me. I take it all inside and breathe in the air that's so unclean, yet keeps me alive. My hometown's My hometown life, its spirits inside. My hometown's alive and filled with the light unfading that I've created. My hometown's alive. My hometown's alive. My hometown life. My hometown life. My hometown's alive. My hometown What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Hometown Sessions. I am Sully Erna, as you know, filming here live at GSHQ somewhere in New England, north of Boston, which I will never tell you where I am because I know the creeps will come. Anyways, we have a really, really great show for you guys today. I have a guest with me that has become such a dear friend of mine and is doing some incredible work around the country, hopefully globally. It's echoing through the whole planet because this guy has really dedicated his life after a pretty rough start in his own life, heading in the wrong direction, completely turned it around and has been doing some amazing work with recovery and addiction. So before I introduce this person who has become near and dear to my heart as a brother of mine, let me show you a little bit about what he does.
My name is James Wahlberg. I'm the executive director of the Mark Walhberg Youth Foundation.
Mark Walhberg Youth Foundation travels across the U.S. to spread awareness on opioid abuse.
Last March, thousands and thousands of students from across New Hampshire filled the SNHU arena to learn about the devastating effects of opioid addiction. The event was put on by the Mark Walhberg Foundation, the DEA, and WMUR to grab the attention of the young adults and open their eyes to the world of addiction. A moment creator Jim Wahlberg says he'll never forget.
The message is that this thing it's not going away. You know, it's here and it's still getting worse. And we need to be out there doing whatever we can.
Ask you guys, please pay attention to what he has to say. God bless all of you. Remember, drug-free is up to me and it's up to you. Stay drug-free. God bless.
So there it is, man. Please welcome my guest today and my dearest friend, Mr. James Wahlberg. What's up, buddy?
What's up, buddy? How you doing?
I'm good, man. Look at you. You look all healthy. You're rocking your scars shirt.
Oh, listen, I'm all about the scars, bro. I got so many of them. The work that you guys are doing is just amazing, man. I'm getting healing from it.
We're trying, man. And you've been a great role model to kind of follow through this thing. So, like, I just want to say thanks for taking some time today and being on the show because we chose to put you on this Thursday because since I started this, I've ran it every Tuesday and Thursday, where Tuesdays is more kind of like hang out with the boys, talk about music, have some of my rock star friends on, and get a little crazy and talk about the war stories. And Thursdays, a lot of people are tuning in because we're trying to help them have some tools in their toolbox to deal with the mental health issues and some of their own scars and traumas that they've already had. And now things like this with COVID and everything else is even triggering it some more. So before we get into that, though, I wanted to just let the people know that, A, you're a Boston boy. You may be in Florida right now, but you are a heart and soul Boston guy. You grew up in Dorchester with, what, nine of you? Is that right?
There's 9 kids in my family. Yep, I'm the middle child.
And so what is the 9? Is it brothers, sisters, mom, and dad, or is it all brothers and sisters?
No. There's 6 boys, 3 girls, and then mom and dad.
Wow.
Yeah.
A lot of good fights in the house?
You know what? We fought a little bit. It was never in your best interest to fight one of us out in the street, though, because then you had to fight all 9 of us.
Yeah. That's what I was going to say. I know Dorchester those are some tough streets, man. So tell us a little bit about Dorchester. Like, paint that picture growing up.
Well, I mean, so we grew up in Dorchester. I was born in Dorchester. I was born in Phil's Corner. And then we moved up to around Ashmont Station, which is sort of a little nicer, one-family homes, but still like a very, very rough neighborhood. Now, we grew up there during the 70s, right? So it was the forced integration of schools. I lived 4 houses away from a middle school, the Woodrow Wilson. And out my bedroom window is where the kids hung out before school. So I remember seeing people with chains and bats and dogs waiting for these school buses to show up for these innocent kids that had no idea why everybody was so angry. And, so Dorchester was a colorful place. And probably, I think I started hanging at the Y by the time I was maybe 10 or 11. And there was like 2 groups of kids at the Y, right? There was the kids that were on the fast track to being successful and very focused. And then there was the rest of us, right? And we loved sports. We loved all that stuff, but we also loved to play poker. We loved to smoke cigarettes. We loved to drink. And so the older kids were teaching me how to do all these things that a little kid shouldn't. Yeah. And I just, I think throughout my life, I always felt sort of a void inside. Like I always long to be loved, long to be wanted. You know, I think those are natural feelings, but I think mine, because of low self-esteem or whatever else was missing in my life, I really sort of went the extra mile to get that attention and to get that love and those friendships.
But do you think some of that came from, or should I just ask? You know, obviously your mom and dad had their hands full with
absolutely.
all your siblings running around
Yeah.
and trying to make sure that you're safe from these dangerous streets and healthy. So
Yep.
is some of it just that maybe your mom or your dad was just a bit overwhelmed and preoccupied and not able to give equality in how many, you know, with the love for the kids?
I'm gonna tell you it goes deeper than that. Okay, so I just wrote a book, right? The book I wrote is called The Big Hustle: A Boston Street Kid's Battle with Addiction and Redemption. Right? That's the title, the long title it's really The Big Hustle. But I have an uncle who is the oldest of my dad's siblings, and he's the only one left in their family. And we got together recently, maybe a year ago, and we had lunch together. And he wanted to know more about my dad as a dad, not as his brother, but as a dad. And what were the difficulties that he and I had with each other? Because he obviously knows very well that my life was very difficult. And I said to him, I don't think I've ever heard the words "I love you" from my dad unless I smelled alcohol.
Wow.
And he said something, Sully, that was really interesting. It put it all into perspective for me. He said, consider yourself lucky. We never heard it at all.
Wow.
Not once.
Wow.
Right? Not from mom or dad, drinking or not drinking or any other way. Right? So I know that, I think that maybe, you know, alcohol, although it had many adverse effects on my family, my own personal life, and my dad's life, I think it did soften his edges a little bit. And maybe, I think sometimes alcohol sort of makes your inner thoughts your outer thoughts.
Yes.
Right? It gives you whatever it is that you think you need to speak more freely.
Yep.
Right? And behave more freely. And so I think my dad was,
or at least without fear a little bit more, right?
Yeah, and
reservation.
I think my dad had zero experience with that kind of love, that parental love, right? And I'm sure he longed for it as a child.
Yeah.
Right? I'm sure he longed for it, and it shapes who you are. Your family of origin, your childhood, as much as we want to sometimes deny, those things shape who you are and how you behave and how you, even though you say, kids for generation after generation after generation says, I'm never going to be like my dad. I'm never going to be like my mom. Then you're 35 years old and you hear yourself yelling the same exact words that they yelled and behaving the exact same way that they behaved. And you're like, how did this happen?
Yeah.
It's almost unavoidable.
Yeah.
Right? It really,
I've had those experiences recently where I look in the mirror and I go, when did I become my father?
Well, I mean, you're 35 now, so
Yeah, you wish.
that's when it happens.
It's about how many brain cells I have left. Wow. You know, it's one of those things too that like I think about a lot of those things because me and you, it's funny, the more I hear about your life, the more I realize how similar the paths that we walked. It really was so close, you know. It's just that I didn't have as many siblings. It was just me and my sister Maria. But my dad left at a very young age, and my mom was left to raise us to the best she could. But she was really, you know, we were in Lawrence, and that's another place that is very challenging.
It's Dorchester.
Exactly.
It's an extension of
Lawrence,
Dorchester.
Lowell, Dorchester, it's all the same, right? And so it's really challenging. And my dad really couldn't pay her anything. So she was not only trying to work jobs at the hospital because she's an x-ray technician, but she was also collecting government, you know, assistance. And I remember always having government cheese and food stamps and all that stuff. And I literally remember, I know that this is such a cliche thing, but, you know, people are like, my father walked to school both ways in the snow barefoot and all. I remember
Both
my
ways.
mom walking through a snowstorm because her car broke down to Demoulas on Essex Street, which is like 2 miles away in a snowstorm, just to cash the food stamps and get food for us. So, and it was that environment. But I remember my mom doing the best she could with showing me love, showing me care, and giving me that protection.
Well,
and
I
that
got
safety.
it from mom.
That's why I was wondering.
I got it from mom. Yeah. So I got it from mom. And I think my mom has instilled that in all of us. We are all, everybody in my family is very loving to their children.
Yeah.
It's probably and potentially, I know for me, I go overboard, right? My kids, they laugh at me. So, like the commercial where the little kid brings their dad into class and says, "This is my best friend." It's like a McDonald's commercial or something. My kids won't even look at me because they know I'm crying, right? They just start laughing at me. I go above and beyond. And it's a combination of because I didn't get it, but also because for the last 30 years, I've really been in a healing process, right? I've done deep self-analysis. I've done major work in my recovery. I've done major work in my faith and grown closer to God. And so the ice has been melting away, and it was a big piece of ice, right? It was like, what they talk about,
glacier.
The glacier is melting, right? Global warming. I'm causing myself global warming, right? I'm getting all warm and fuzzy, right? But my mother, you talked about your mom walking to Demoulas. So in my book, I describe a situation with my mom. So here's the thing, Sully. I would be home safe in my house, right? You might remember this, the smell of Aquanet hairspray.
Oh my God, do I have a story about Aquanet?
Listen, on my mother's pillow, right? The smell of that hairspray was the most comforting. It made me feel the safest. It made me feel warm inside, right? And I would be home safe, wrapped in that pillow. And then the thought of I'm missing something in the streets would come over me, right? Like something's happening, they're partying, they're doing stuff without me, and I got to get down there. And I would literally climb out my sister's window onto the garage roof, jump off the garage, run down to the corner. And
just to see what's going on.
And there'd be nobody there.
Yeah.
Right? And then I couldn't get back in the house. But my mother, at a certain point, I used to run away and do all this stuff. And at a certain point, nobody was looking for me anymore, right? And I was 13 years old, right? And my mother used to work overnights in a bank in downtown Boston, cleaning the floors, right? Cleaning the offices. And I remember one night, I saw my mother walk into the train station. It's like 11 o'clock at night. She walks a mile and a half to the train station to get on the train to go all the way downtown by herself to go to work, right? And I remember seeing her from I was hiding behind a pole or whatever and seeing her, and I remember longing to run to her and say, help me, save me, whatever, right? Like, I love you, I'm sorry. But something inside of me wouldn't allow me to do it, And that relationship with my mother now, after all of the things we've been through, we were talking yesterday, and we just had a moment. We FaceTime each other every day, sometimes a couple times a day. And we had a moment where I was just able to express to her the gratitude that I have for all her sacrifice, right? My mother, 9 kids. Her and my dad broke up when I was maybe 14 years old, 15 years old.
Are all the kids from your real mom and dad? Or did they was there another marriage in there?
So there's my mom, the 3 oldest kids in my family, which 2 of them are gone now. And my 2 oldest sisters both passed away. One about less than a year ago, and then one 10 years ago. Yeah. Wow. And then my oldest brother, Arthur, all have a separate dad.
Okay.
But that was never an issue in my home.
But are all
right?
the kids your mom's?
All the kids are my mom's.
Wow, she is a warrior.
And she lost 2 kids to miscarriage.
Oh, wow.
Right? Yeah, so she really was going to have 11
Wow.
kids. And my mother will tell you, see, my mother also grew up in dysfunction, right? She also grew up in alcoholism, right? So she will tell you that the reason she wanted to have so many kids is she just was longing for love, right? She tells a story about when she was about 11 years old. Everybody in her house, her mom, her dad were both bad drinkers. Her older sisters and her brother were just kind of off, everyone was just trying to survive. And Christmas, she got the tree. She got the presents. She was 11 or 12 years old, right? To see them happy.
Yeah.
Right? There was no happiness under the tree for her. She got her happiness in seeing them happy. And so I think that having all those kids was also filling voids for her, right? When you grow up in dysfunction, right? Your version of normal is not what other people's version of normal is, as you know. Yep. And and the other story I want to tell you is, so we were little kids. We lived in a triple decker, right? 9 kids, 2 parents, and a dog. My father hit a number with the bookies and bought a house. He put a down payment on a house, and it was a 4-bedroom house. So it was still stacked. We were still stacked 2 to a bed, the whole thing. But we used to fill green trash bags with laundry and get on the bus and go to the laundromat, right? Yeah, can you imagine? Or we would go to the store, the neighborhood corner store, where all my older brother Paul's friends worked. And for some reason, we thought, it's funny how young people's minds work as it relates to shame, right? We were on food stamps. Somehow we convinced ourselves that they were doing much better than us. And so all these kids worked at the corner store. I would go with food stamps and literally have to wait hours for one of them not to be behind the counter. The old Greek guy would be behind the counter, and I'd give him all the food stamps, right? But it was all artificial shame and guilt, right? I didn't do anything to be in that situation. Yep. None of us did, right? My dad worked every day. My father didn't accept a handout and not go to work. My father worked every day, and many times 2 jobs, and my mom worked a full-time job, right, to feed us, and it still wasn't enough.
Yeah.
But the shame and the guilt and stuff, those things shape us and define us
totally
to a point,
yep.
right? And when shame is something that sort of is a recurring theme in your life, you're going to look for something to make that shame go away, make you feel different, and make you feel softer, take off the edge.
And to add to that too, I've also noticed that, especially when your family. Now, did your mom and dad stay together the whole time? Did they split up?
No, they got divorced. They got divorced.
When you were young?
I was 14, 15, maybe.
So still fairly young. Yeah. Because those are the key moments in life, right? You do a lot of work with the kids right now in that like middle school area, high school, because if you can get them right before even the high school stage, you can help change their course. Because once you get to that high school stage, it really starts defining who your real friends are, who you're going to go the distance with, and what kind of path you're going to walk. Mm-hmm. And that's when you can really get influenced, especially when, for me, and I know you had a similar lifestyle, my dad was out of the picture when I was 4, right? I mean, he was trying to be in the picture, but him and my mom, it wasn't good. And because of that, I was left to raise myself to become whatever my version of what I thought a man was supposed to be. Mm-hmm. And my version of a man was the punks that hung out on the street with the jean jackets, selling weed and all that stuff, and would, encourage me to like kick this kid's ass or watch them kick someone's ass. And that was badass to me. I wanted to be that, right? So that was what my vision of a man is, because these kids were older. They took a liking to me for whatever reason, because I was just a tough little kid. And like those things become your vision of what you think a man is, and you adapt that, right? And that also starts to create scars and trauma, because now your sense of pride, your sense of ego, all that stuff gets inflated by encouragement through the wrong kind of crowds, right? And I'm sure you've known about that.
So the first time, actually the second time I ever got drunk in my life, I was about 11 years old. I stole somebody's wallet from their locker at the Y that I hung at, a place that I loved, a place that was home for me. I stole this guy's wallet. It was $50 in the wallet. It was like 1976, right? I bring the wallet up the street to the hippies who lived up the street from me, and for that $50, I got a quart of Budweiser and a pack of Marlboros, right? Which probably cost $1 combined. And I hung out with them. I drank that quart of Budweiser, and something happened to me. I couldn't get enough. And we were all on the side of the Woodrow Wilson School, and it was like the summer of love, and everybody was hanging out in the grass. And I was running around drinking their beer as much as I could, as fast as I could. And I went home, and I was downstairs in my basement at home, and the room started spinning. So I said, I got to get out of here. I come up the stairs, and as I'm crossing through the kitchen, heading for the back door, I trip over the threshold of the door, throw up all over the kitchen floor. Now, my mother sitting at her perch on the kitchen counter, smoking a cigarette with her phone with the 500-foot cord.
Oh,
It was like the first version of the cell phone. She could take it all the way upstairs from the kitchen. And she said to my sister, "What is that smell?" She made my sister basically smell my throw up, right?
Oh.
And she said, "This is alcohol."
Ew.
And so my mother said to me, "Alcohol? Where did you get alcohol?" And I pointed right up the street. I said, "They made me do it." She went up that street and beat the head hippie up over his head with her shoe,
Wow.
right? My mother was a tough lady.
Wow.
And so I got locked in my room for a few days. And then ultimately, I think my parents kind of thought about it in the old school way. Like when you caught a kid smoking, you make them smoke a whole pack, they get sick.
Oh, yeah.
They'll never do that again.
Yeah.
So I think they thought I was so violently ill from this alcohol that I would never drink again. Well, I was out of my house 5 minutes, and I was back up to that hippie's house,
Wow.
ready to pay the price for snitching on him as long as I could have some more.
Oh,
And that was the beginning of,
the downward spiral.
dude, I was
Right.
11 years old driving around in stolen cars with these guys.
Oh, wow.
They would break into somebody else's house. They would open the window and throw me in and say, "Go open the door," but I felt wanted. I felt accepted.
Yes.
I felt a part of, right? And that was important to me. And I felt separate from my family. So my identity wasn't wrapped up in my 8 brothers and sisters. Doing my own thing.
That's the question I want to really ask you, because I don't have the benefit of coming from a large family like that. It was me and my sister. Now, when my dad remarried, he had a boy and a girl, and we're very close. My half brother and sister were super close. But I guess my question is that, if your mom was there to give you the love, right? And you had all these brothers and sisters around you, and you know that probably the holidays were crazy and fun and nuts and all that stuff. Why is it that you feel that you were lacking this like yearning for love kind of thing? Like where weren't you getting it from?
So I think here's the thing is that there's 9 kids. You're all competing for that attention. You're all competing for that love, right?
Yeah.
And there's a limited amount of it available, right?
Mm-hmm.
My mother worked overnight, which meant she slept during the day.
Yeah.
Right? And so like in the summertime, my mother would work all night, come home, pack up the station wagon when we had a car, because many times we didn't have a car.
Yep.
She would pack all 9 kids, pack a lunch, and we would go to the beach. She would sleep on the beach, right? She would sleep, and we would just run wild like maniacs.
Yeah.
Right? So, there was love, but it was limited, and there was too many people. It's like puppies trying to get to the nipple, right?
Yeah.
It's a fight.
Yeah.
And so I also think that every one of my siblings had their own issues as well, right?
That's amazing to me that that humans feel that instinctively that I go through it, not to, I'm not comparing, but I go through it with my dogs. Like I have a couple of different pit bulls, and if you pay attention to too much, the other one's just sitting there like yearning for a pet.
Yeah.
And you're like, Well, even though you could love this thing 23 hours a day, and the 1 hour you give to this one,
I think that's
getting
why
super jealous.
but I think that's why we love animals so much, right?
Yeah.
Because it's so superficial, right? It's like I walk out of my house. I've been with I have a dog, and it's not a pit bull, okay? It's a little Yorkie, right? The greatest dog ever. But I could spend 2 hours with my dog, walk out of the house, come back in, and she'll act like she hasn't seen me in a week.
Yeah.
And that fills a void, right? Immediately. We're loved, we're wanted, we're desired, people that dog cares about us. And I think that's kind of why we love animals so much. We don't have to, they don't yell at you, they don't give you their opinion, they don't disagree with you, they don't do any of that. They just love you unconditionally.
So listen, I want to circle back to something though before we get too far from it, because now I think people are starting to understand the environment, right, that you were in, what the household was like, how challenging it can be for a single mom to try to balance her love between 9 kids and feed them and keep them safe, and all the concerns and fears as a mom naturally has, because women more than men sometimes just have, there's that bond because they carried you for 9 months. So they're the first wolf with a bone. Right, you come near that. You come near the kid, man. It's like game over, right? Even though if a dad's the same way, especially if it's a little girl and all that, it's like very protective. But a mom, I think, even more so. That there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. They'll step in front of a train for their kid if that means they're going to save their life, right? And so all that, and then being raised in this tough environment, and then getting into your adolescence years, into your teens, and all that stuff. And of course, as you grow, the danger becomes less dangerous feeling to you, right? So you start to get a little braver, and you start to kind of ramp that up, and to the point that either the things that you're doing becomes real dangerous, that are going to have you end up dead or in jail pretty much, right? How do you think that all played into the beginning of your addiction?
Listen, it was, so this is,
is it genetic for you, do you think? Or was this
I think it's a combination.
An evolution of the streets, or is it a hybrid?
I think it's a combination. I think that if you come from alcoholism or addiction, I think you are far more susceptible to have those issues yourself, right? And I think if you are a person that was raised by an alcoholic or raised by a person that's addicted, I think you need to be on your toes more than everybody else, right? But I think also environmentally, it's amazing when you think, so I'm like 11 or 12 years old, right? And I'm hanging out with a whole bunch of other 12-year-old kids that are doing the same thing.
Yeah.
And you talked a little bit about divorce, right? And I don't want to guilt anybody into anything or out of anything or whatever, but I've been doing my own little sort of mini study, right? I meet people and I talk to them in this addiction space, and so many of them are from homes of divorce, right? And I'm not sure, because I'm not like a clinical therapist or a clinical scientist or any of those things, but coming from homes that have been broken up, and the things that you see and you experience as what leads to that breakup, I certainly think can contribute to, for me, and not everybody agrees with me in my assessment of addiction, but for me, addiction comes from brokenness. It comes from trauma and brokenness, right? So traumas that have happened in your life that you just like, how do I connect that back to when I was 8 years old and I was painting the fence and my dad yelled at me and said, "What good is it if I have to paint it over again after you do it?" Or something like that. I'm 54 years old. I remember that like it was yesterday.
Yeah.
It still stings when I think about it.
Some things echo.
And he had no intention of, he wasn't being mean. He was just telling me the truth as he knew it, which was, if you paint the fence wrong and I have to paint it again, what good is it? I might as well just paint it myself, right? So, but it devalued me. It devalued the work that I was doing, right? It devalued how I felt as a person, right? Even though I was a little person.
And so how does the drugs and alcohol play into that now? Does that give you the escape that you need to not feel the pain? Is it
Absolutely.
numbing?
But I don't think you don't see it as you're doing it, right? I'm not drinking as a 14 or 15-year-old kid thinking about
numbing pain.
The fence, right? I'm just now I'm in it. Now it's part of my life, right? And the thing about addiction that is important to remember is that the thing that the outside world sees as the thing tearing you apart, you see that thing as what's holding you together, right? Alcohol became the glue that held my life together.
Yeah.
The drugs that I did became the glue that held my life together. Those things made me have courage. They made me have confidence. They made me until they turned on me, right? So, it would start out a great night and I was a young kid, and then I would cross that invisible line from an average drinker to a blackout drinker.
Yeah.
Right. So it wasn't uncommon for me to wake up in a police station and have no idea why I was there.
Yeah.
It wasn't uncommon for me to wake up in a car in Bangor, Maine, in the middle of February, frozen. And I'm not even sure how I got there. And I got out of the car and there was only one business open. It was a bar. And I went in the bar and then it came back to me. There were some people in that bar that I was with earlier in the night. But it was not uncommon for me to wake up in places and not know how I got there. Right. And, you talk a lot about the similarities between my life and your life and growing up and the way you grew up and the way I grew up. And I'll tell you that something that is critical to young people, particularly young people that maybe have started to have some experiences with drugs and alcohol or come from families that have suffered from addiction, is finding a passion, whatever that is. And you found music, right? You need to find a passion, something that can distract you from sort of jumping off that cliff, right? See, I know you as a guy that sort of was militant about not really drinking and not getting high, and in a world that was their thing, right? That was what's going on all around you, right? But I think you had a clear vision because of the passion that you had and the creativity that you have. You were able to sort of navigate those waters for yourself. It takes a lot of discipline.
It wasn't that easy, though. I mean, I definitely I danced with the devil a little bit too much and still do once in a while. I haven't quite got it completely out of my life. I've been able to understand how to control it somewhat in a way that I don't enjoy partying like I used to, but once in a while I'll have a glass of wine at dinner with a steak or something like that. But even in those times too, now the cleaner I've gotten over the years, the more I can even feel that one drink now, and I wake up the next day and not only is it a little bit of grogginess and blah, but I even feel a little bit of guilt of like, why did I need that? I was having a great time. Why did I have to feel I had to enhance that energy when it was already good? It's almost like and I think that's another thing that plays into the process of addiction is what starts out as like a fun buzz and you want to recreate that. You start chasing that dragon, right? You start chasing that thing, that unicorn of like a great feeling. And all of a sudden that great feeling turns into a habit and you can never quite get that feeling again.
Yeah, but I think it's a little deeper than that for people for me, my sort of belief of the way things worked before this opioid epidemic that we've been living through for the last almost 20 years now, right? I have pre-opioid thoughts of addiction and then post-opioid thoughts of addiction. And for me, I think it's wiring. It's a chemical imbalance, right? I think young people kind of always want to recreate that. You go out on the weekend and you have a couple of drinks and you have a buzz and you love it. You have the best time of your life and you can't wait to do it again, but you do wait to do it again till the next Friday night. For someone like me, I can't wait to do it again. So I do it the next day and the next day and the next day and the next day. And it's more than trying to recreate a good time. It's trying to it's trying to just live.
Yep.
It's trying to just feel okay, right? To get away from the anxiety and the fear and the shame and all those other things. You're not aware of it at the time, but as they say, hindsight is 20/20. Looking back on my life, it's so clear to me
Yep.
that I was just trying to paint a picture for somebody else.
So, that brings up a good point, Jim. Let me ask you this then. If you're a younger person
Yep.
and you start to recognize that, like, maybe some of these things we're talking about, people are paying attention and, like, there's a lot of patterns in there that I'm following, but haven't lived to be 54 yet, haven't been able to look in hindsight yet. How do you get through to those people that haven't had those experiences yet or paid the price in order for them to go back and go, we can stop it right here and I won't have to deal with those kind of traumas because there's no happy ending to this movie, right? So how do they identify that earlier?
Those are the $50,000 questions, right? See, the thing is you're battling with youth, right? You're trying to explain to a young person that this can have, when I talk about the opioid epidemic, it's immediate consequences. You could be dead tomorrow. You could be dead today. You could use one time and be dead, and it's never been more true than it is right now when it comes to opioids, right? But with addiction in general, it's like telling a young person, don't smoke cigarettes because it might kill you in 50 years.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
Young people think they're invincible. They don't think it's going to happen to them. So sometimes they have to suffer in order to see that, this is real. Yeah. And then sometimes you are able to reach people, right? And sometimes just that information is only sometimes it's planted in their mind. They don't really process, this could be a problem for me. But at a certain point in their life, that information starts to regurgitate in their mind like, hey man, I better watch out. I have 3 children. My oldest son so my children have never seen me drunk or high their entire lives, right? I've been available, reliable, responsible, loving, caring, and a provider for them their entire lives, right? And my oldest son, I've been hammering into his head his entire life. When it comes to drugs and alcohol, you can't afford to gamble because you come from a long line of people who couldn't do it in safety, right? On both sides of his family, right? And he heard that and he got that information and he processed the information and then he still had to go stick his hand over the stove. And when it comes to people with bad wiring, right? The average person, you might tell the average person, hey, keep your hand away from the stove. You might get burnt. They still might walk over to the stove and just
they got to feel it for themselves sometimes.
Well, but people with bad wiring, they stick their hand over, and then they go like this and stick their other hand over just to make sure, right? And he took that journey. He had to experience it for himself, and he paid a heavy price for it, And for a guy who was homeless, in and out of juvenile detention, group homes, halfway homes, foster homes, and then on to state prison, right?
And you're talking about you.
I'm talking about me, and I'm talking about my definition of a tough life because it's my life that I lived, right? I thought that was tough. Yeah. It didn't even touch the surface to finding out that your own kid was using. That's a whole new pain.
What was what was your moment like? Was it going to prison for this? Was it something dumb you did? What was your pivotal moment that you woke up? Where was it?
Okay, so my moment started with me just running game, right?
Because before you answer though, let me just say this because a lot of people do this. I've done it. There's times where you just go, I can't do this anymore. I'm exhausted. I'm going to die. I'm going to end up, something's going to happen. It's going to be bad. And then it starts this, sometimes it starts most of the time, I would say, it's very rare that someone just goes, I'm done, I quit, and it's over.
Yeah.
It's like, I can't do this anymore. And then a couple of days later, you feel okay, and you go, I'm just going to have wine now. I'm not going to drink hard liquor. And then it becomes 3 bottles of wine, and then you're back on drugs or whatever. You know what I mean? There's this pattern of like, I'm done, but then you're kind of not done. But then at some point, for people that have been able to beat this, and you probably will always consider yourself an alcoholic, right? It's not who you are, it's what you are, right? It's a disease. But there's got to be that moment that like, you know, what is that moment that it's not going to be like I quit, but am I really quitting? It's like, I'm fucking done. This is it.
I want to tell you something, right? So it was a process for me, right? So I did 5 years in state prison.
Wow.
Right? I did almost all 5 of those years in Walpole.
Wow.
In the hole. Okay? I get out on a Friday. I pick up a drink on my way to see my mom. It's the first time I'm actually old enough to drink alcohol, right? Legally. Go have a drink, go to my mother's house. And for the next 6 months, I was either in a gray out or a blackout the entire time. I drank.
So you went Wait, you got out when you were 21?
No. I got out when I was 22.
So you went in at 17?
Yeah, and went back when I was 22.
Wow.
Okay? So I get out, I pick up a drink, and I pick up some dry goods, right? At that time, it was the 80s. Everybody was sticking white powder in their nose and smoking it in a pipe and doing whatever they were doing.
Yeah.
And I picked up the day I got out, and I was in a gray out or a blackout the entire time I was out, 6 months. I get arrested again. I get 6 to 9 years.
Wow.
Brand new sentence. I go back to jail, and the only thing I can...
For what?
I got arrested for breaking and entering.
Oh.
I broke into a cop's house, and he came home.
So after the first sentence, you were on probation, right? So you broke probation?
No. I did every bit of the sentence.
Oh.
I did every bit of it and got out, right? And then I get arrested again. I go back to jail. They give me 6 to 9 years. The only thing I knew was, based on my previous experience being in prison, was that I did a 3 to 5. I did 5 on it. I should have only did 2 on it and been out on parole. The only thing I knew is I couldn't do 9 years. If I did 9 years, I'd be older than 30 when I got out, and that was prehistoric.
Wow.
For a kid, that's old, right?
Totally.
And so what I did was I started to do things to create an illusion that I was trying to get better. I started going to different 12-step groups. I started going to therapy. And then ultimately, so I'm in prison, I'm doing all these things, and I'm not using, because I know once you put yourself out there as a person in recovery, then you become a target to get tested.
Drug tested, yeah.
All this stuff. So, because they love to disprove that. They don't want people, the goal of prison is not for you to come there and get better and go home. The goal is for you to get there, get out, come back, get out, come back, get out, come back, right? They want that return business. And so I start going to these meetings and trying to create this illusion, but always, I can remember having the thought in my heart, what a wonderful thing this is for those people. But this is never going to work for me.
Yeah.
If they really knew me, I wouldn't even be welcome here, right? I had such a low opinion of myself. I had such a low esteem, right? That I didn't think I was worthy of this life that these people were telling me they were living now. And so I was in MCI Concord up on Route 2, and I was running this game, and then the Catholic priest came to me and said, "Hey, I'm looking for a custodian to clean the chapel. Would you be interested in that job?" And I said, "Absolutely," because I knew I would have access to a phone. I knew he smoked cigarettes. I knew I could get coffee. I could get quiet and get out of the craziness of the prison. And ultimately, he was running game on me. He wanted me to come back to church.
Yeah.
He didn't want me just to clean. He wanted me to go to church. Yeah. He knew I came from a Catholic family.
He used reverse psychology on you.
He was hustling me. And so after about 2 weeks of working at that job, he comes to me and he says, we have a very special visitor coming to the prison next week. And I said, really, who's that? And he said, Mother Teresa is coming to this prison. And at that time, she's the most famous humanitarian in the world, right? Catholic nun living in India, serving the poor, speaking at United Nations. She won the Nobel Peace Prize. I mean, she was on the fast track to be a saint. And so I'm like, wow, that's amazing. Who's Mother Teresa? I had no idea. I grew up in jail. I didn't know anything. And so she comes. I see her. I'm in her presence. And it changed me. It changed me. When I tell you, I always felt like God was present in my life, if you will. Not that I was supposed to be a holy person or a priest or any of those things, but that I just felt like that he was present and that he wanted better for me, right? And so she comes and it changes me in a way that I can't explain. I never saw such humility. I never saw such kindness or such love for another human being in the worst circumstances. When I look back on it now, I honestly believe that God was showing off, right? God is saying to me specifically, I kept trying to pull you back when you were suffering out there and you wouldn't listen to me. So I had to send my number one assistant specifically for you. Yeah. Because I'm telling you, I can tell you, like I can tell you my name, that from that moment, my life is different. From that moment, it hasn't been perfect, but I got out of prison. I never found it necessary to go back. I haven't found it necessary to take another drink or a drug. I haven't been in a pair of handcuffs. I haven't been homeless. I haven't been, I've had difficulties. I've had challenges. Life is not easy, right? Yeah. But my life changed. And I have to directly connect it to me, a running game and doing those things and trying to create the illusion of getting better, and then being in the presence of what I equate to God's number one assistant right there to tell me. She got up. She first refused to go up on the stage where they were doing the mass and the cardinal was there and all this stuff with his big hat. And they had a big fancy chair for her and she refused to sit in it. Sully, she stayed on her knees with the inmates, with the murderers and the bank robbers and the rapists. She stayed with them. And when it was her time to speak, she just got up and said, "You are more than what brought you here. And that you are loved and you are appreciated and you are worthy," right? All words that were foreign to me. Yeah. It was like she was speaking a different language.
But needed to hear.
I needed to hear it because I didn't know it. I never felt those things that she was talking about. And now I do. And now I feel like I'm being used. And, I know this is not like I appreciate the fact that I can share my journey and it can just be okay, right? Sure. And so, I feel like people see me now and they say, wow, you came to one of our events. You saw 5,000 kids.
More than
watching a movie I made, listening to the words that I say. Yeah. And I'd love to say it's all because I'm a great guy. But I know that for me, God took all the nasty little things about me and turned them into assets. Yep. All the shame and all the guilt and the brokenness. He said, you can use those things as tools to reach other people, to try to point them in the right direction.
That's right.
And so I got to give God credit for being God, man, for saying, hey, dude, I could take you out of the grips of hell and put you here in a position where you can make a difference in the world. Yeah. And really,
how are you able to do that without acquiring the experiences, because now you're kind of a catalyst for it. You need to load up. Sometimes I wonder if even this higher power, the universe, whatever it is that people follow in their religion that keeps faith in their life, I wonder, is sometimes we load it up to learn our own lessons, but also be able to carry that wisdom into the next generations to try to help a bigger and better cause. Because speaking of the event, I will say real quick, when I went to that event, I don't even know if I've ever told you this, but you invited me down. You said, hey, we're going to be in Lowell. Come down to this, arena and you can come see what we do. And I'm like, cool. I walked in there with zero understanding or any information about what I was stepping into. You guys had me come in through the backstage door. I got to the side of the stage. You guys were just about to start. The lights go down, and the first thing that comes up is a movie that you guys play, and you're showing real overdoses from real life situations. And I got to tell you, the first thing that it did was send a chill up my spine, because when you see it happening and how intense it is, and watching someone die right in front of you, which is not a natural act for a human to experience. Sure. We're not designed to watch death. Like, that's pretty heavy to begin with. And so, and you're watching these young kids that have a whole life ahead of them, and you're going, and they're convulsing and foaming at the mouth and being taken away in ambulances. And I was like, oh my, now I've seen a lot of crap in my life as well, but I got to tell you, that right now even gives me the goosebumps thinking about it, because I have a daughter who's 18. She's right in that target range, and I'm going, please don't go that way. But the other thing I noticed was I walk in, and as you're on stage left on the ground, there's the arena seats start from your left, and they kind of curl all the way around like a bowl. And the whole section, that whole load section, was filled with people. And I seen the whole arena filled with people. And my first thought was like, wow, this is like a lot of kids here he's going to be talking to. But then I realized the whole section to my left, as I kind of focused a little bit more, I noticed that all the people there were adults, and they were holding a picture of a child. And that's when I realized that, oh my God, this isn't all children here. These are parents that lost their kids to an overdose. And when I tell you, I get choked up right now just thinking about it, man. At that point, I was like, I have to see this. And I just stayed for the whole event, and it was so powerful and so amazing. And the work that you're doing, and how long you've been engulfed in this thing for, is just really so commendable and so honorable. And you do it in such a humble way, and you do it for the right reasons that I've seen. Like, this has nothing to do with James Wahlberg. This doesn't even have to do with Mark Walhberg, the foundation, all that stuff. There's no ego involved here. It's so selfless. It's such a amazing journey you guys are on, but it's never about you guys. Even with the celebrity that your brother has, it's never about that for him. I always just see you guys working towards bettering the next generations, helping younger people and any people that get involved in addiction, even if it comes from a knee surgery or whatever their road was to that. Just a true way of, making sure they understand the dangers and helping them to avoid those paths, as best they can. And for that, I'm just really, amazed and even more honored to have known you as a person, a friend, someone I've grown to love like a brother. But seeing the work that you do is just, it's exhausting for me to just watch how much you're involved in. And I just think it's incredible. And I wanted you on the show because I need people to hear from people like you that I consider an expert in this field now, not because you have a doctor's degree, but because you've lived in it, as I have, and I'm trying to think, where's my part in this world? And it took me a long time to figure out I have a voice that comes through music, and people pay attention to those words. And it wasn't until I received a letter one day, I'll just tell you a quick story, from a lady who had went through a nasty divorce. The husband was a big shot corporate guy. She was a housewife. He has all the attorneys. She has not much. And long story short, he won, took the kids, took the house. She was done. She's like, I'm taking my life today kind of thing. And got in his car and decided to drive herself off a cliff, right? This is the letter I'm reading. And I love the fact that she was taking his car, by the way. Take the Mercedes. Just one more before you go. But on her way to do this horrible act, she I guess this guy listened to Godsmack because there was a CD player in the stereo, and she was tuning in somehow to the lyrics. And my first record is about my journey in life, from zero to when I got a deal. All those songs in there, the heart and soul of who I was, what I went through, the pain, the heartbreaks, the addictions, the abandonment, like the trauma with my dad, all that stuff. And so she just said she pulled the car over because she realized at that point somebody else has gone through intense pain, and she broke down. She said she cried for 2 hours. She went back. She fought. Whatever it was, a year or two later, she won the house back. She won the kids back. And it was at that moment that I realized I got to stop watching what I say too, because growing up in an environment like I did, all I want to say is fuck you, right? Because I'm mad. I'm angry all the time. I'm like, I don't want to be like, okay, I understand, and be all polite. It's hard to do that when you have like built up intensity in you and you've lived that lifestyle of like fight for your life. But at that moment, I realized I better stop. It's okay for me to bare my soul. It's okay to be vulnerable, but I better watch what I do here because people are listening. And that's what my voice became known for. So in the same way, I took all that experience, and I've been working with all that experience throughout my life to make sure that I try my best to send the right messages in a positive way. Now, I'm not perfect either. I have my days where I do want to go, fuck you. But I'm trying my best to not do that because I know that that's also part of my own crap that I have to still, make sure I have a handle on. And that's my work that needs to be done. So, again, I just want to say that, man, just keep doing what you're doing. Thanks so much for the support you've given the Scars Foundation. You guys donated a grant to us a while back that was used to send some kids deeper into their athleticism. One of them won the Golden Gloves. I don't know if I told you, but one of the kids.
No, you didn't, but that's awesome.
Yep. He just last year. They both went to the Golden Gloves. One of them got to the semifinals. The other one actually won it. So that, things like that just change their lives, and they come from Lawrence and some of the streets of where I grew up. So it really is making a difference what you do and the work you've put into this. And, I guess I want to just have the people learn a little bit more about you as well and what's coming up for you with projects and things that you have, on the back burner, or things that are like on the front burner now that they're about to pop. I mean, what's going on now with you, with Jim Wahlberg? And
well, so I mean, all of what I do is it's all intertwined, it's all interconnected, and it's all focused on really trying to just educate people, and also to. I talked a lot about my faith, and I want to share that with people, and I want to share sort of how somebody can go from living this unbelievably terrible life to being able to live a life of service, right? And so over the last year, I wrote a book. We mentioned it here already. It's called The Big Hustle.
No, we didn't. This is the first we're mentioning it.
No. I mentioned it earlier, I think.
No, we talked the other day. But now, this is the first we're learning, so tell us.
Okay, all right. So the book is called The Big Hustle, a Boston kid's journey with addiction and redemption. And it's actually available right now on pre-orders on Amazon.
Cool.
It comes out in August. And then I have a movie coming out in September that I co-wrote and I directed. And it's another movie on addiction because that's my lane. That's where I find myself to be the most effective.
Yeah.
And so the film is called What About the Kids? And it examines, right now in this country, there are hundreds of thousands of grandparents raising their grandchildren because of overdose deaths of either their own child or the spouse or a loved one of their child, right? And so this film is it examines a family that has this. It's the star of the film is an 8-year-old girl who is just absolutely incredible, and there's a Boston connection there too.
Cool.
She lives here in Florida. She came for an audition, had her come back for an audition, and she started telling me about her dad, who's from Boston and who's a big Red Sox fan and Patriots fan and so on, and it helped. her a win. It helped her a win, believe me. It was down to her and one other girl. But this little girl actually absolutely knocked it out of the park. And so her mom dies from an overdose. Her dad ends up in treatment, and her grandparents end up taking custody of her. And we look at that journey. And so the film also comes with a documentary style examination of a real family that had the same sort of experience. So both of them are coming out, book in August, movie in September. We were on tour with the DEA doing events like the event that you came to. Who knows when we'll be able to be in a large crowd again. But we are now turning those events into virtual events. So now we're still educating children and young people about the opioid epidemic that we're living through. So we're getting ready to do our first virtual event, I believe, at the end of the month. And it will be focused on one particular state, and all the junior high school and high school kids in that state will have access to a live streaming event where they'll show my film that is the one that you saw called If Only, starring my son.
Yes.
Starring my son, Jeffrey.
Yep.
And
it's a good film. Powerful.
Yeah, thank you very much. And
some distirbing scenes in it, but very powerful. But
it's
that's
tough,
reality,
yeah.
man,
But you can't kids see through it all. You can't candy code it for them, and you can't try to create an illusion for them. You just have to tell them the truth.
Yeah, this isn't Hollywood. This part isn't Hollywood. This is based on real life.
Yeah. And it's all so
the name of the movie again is
the name of the movie is What About the Kids? And there's a website that you can go to called whataboutthekidsfilm.com, and it has the trailer for the film. It has information about resources that you can tap into if you're having difficulties with addiction. Yeah, I mean, we continue to work. I have my podcast, which you will be a guest on next week, I hope.
Yeah.
And that's called The Bottom Line, and that's on YouTube. It's on Apple Podcast. It's on Spotify. It's on Stitcher, TuneIn. And we've had a great response.
We're putting all the links in the description too. So if anybody right now is looking for it before the show ends, make sure you take a screenshot of the description. We have all your links in there for your movie, your book, and all that as well. So we got about 5 minutes or so left, and I want to give you the floor for the last 5 minutes because I think this is the real critical part that people need to hear the most. So as you know, I've been really immersing myself into the whole world of trying to help and make a bit of a difference as best I can with the Scars Foundation, with addiction, PTSD, severe depression, suicide prevention, bullying, all these things that I feel are triggered by the same things that trigger our addiction or whatever it is that you battle. A lot of people right now, because we're dealing in these times of COVID and what a mess this thing is, and they've already had struggles with mental health and things like that in general. And now this has triggered them more through isolation, through not being uncertain about how the new world is going to create or whatever. Every guest I've had on, I've really tried to help them understand maybe some tools to add to their toolbox that you can give from your perspective on what they can do and what you could suggest for them to, you touched on it a little bit earlier, but I'd love for you to elaborate a little bit more on finding a passion, finding time, finding a way to pass time, something you love, figure it out. Some people don't know that. They're not a musician, they're not an actor, but whether you're a painter, whether you're into maybe this is the time to drop 50 pounds because you've always wanted to join the gym. And if you're not going to do it now, when are you really going to do it? Because you have all the time in the world now.
Sure.
Right? So what would you say to the people right now too that are really, they come in and you'll see them on the in the notes as well that, they struggle with the dark times and you hit those moments where you have a great day, but then when those days come and you abyss into that black hole, it's really hard to motivate to do anything in that moment. Nobody understands. You're just dark and you're going to sit in it. And sometimes that silent killer is the biggest scare for all of us because it's taken several friends of mine my friends' lives. And I want people to be able to get it out of their body. And for example, I told them for me, the day that a friend of mine took his life when I was just starting this band. I didn't know how to sing yet. I was just writing music. I wasn't good at it. And I was writing lyrics about dumb things, hooking up with a girl or whatever it was. I'm like, I don't even know how to write lyrics yet, and I'm just trying to be a singer. But my friend took his life, and it was the first time ever that I sat in a room on the floor with tears in my eyes writing just about how he must have felt to have gone to the depths of that. Like, a lot of people talk about it, but it takes huge balls to actually pull the trigger and go for it, right? And I started thinking like, wow, I thought I've experienced pain, but how deep was that pain for you to actually do it, right? And that was the first time that I noticed that now music has become a vehicle for me to vent my emotions through, and has become therapeutic. So again, the question to you is, what do you do to not go back down that road, to make sure you never go there again? And what do you think people could do that may not have the talents of being a film director or an actor or a musician, but need an outlet?
So I think that, first of all, I think it's important for me to say that this is not something, I didn't beat this thing, right? This is, for me, it's contingent on my spiritual condition today, right? My happiness and my being actively part of my own recovery is contingent on that today, not yesterday. I'm blessed to have 32 years of experience not using, right? And trying to live the best life I can live. But it's possible for me to fall into those traps and to fall into those holes. And you know, in recovery, what you hear about all the time is don't isolate, don't separate yourself. You need human connection. The thing about addiction is about isolation, loneliness, sadness, brokenness. And recovery is about connection, love, and true friendship. There's a real connection, right? And so when you have that taken away from you because the world is now a different place, it can become very, very difficult.
Yes.
What I find that has been helpful for me is I try to spend time reaching out to others, not in search of them helping me, but in search of me trying to be assistance to them, right? There's nothing helps me to forget about my own troubles than being of service to somebody else that's having difficulties, right? That for me is the best tool for me to get out of my own way and to get out of my own sadness or my own self-pity or my own brokenness or whatever it is, right? I focus on that other person and I take the focus off myself. And so, you know, we're all walking around with cell phones, right? Now, in my cell phone, there's probably a couple of thousand phone numbers. There's probably 20 or 30 people in here that I really love and care about. Then there's a bunch of people in here that have business relationships and things of that nature. And then there's probably a whole bunch of people in here I don't even really like very much. What I try to do is I try to start with those people.
Yeah.
I try to reach out to those people,
Yeah.
right? Think about this, Sully. Think about what it would mean to somebody to get a call from Sully, right? See, now I know Sully's just a person, right? And Sully's just a regular everyday guy, but Sully is a person who's had a considerable amount of success and is very talented, very creative. He's a famous person. Think about what it would mean to a person that maybe you don't get along with very well, or maybe you don't even know them very well, that you took the time to call them and ask them how they were doing. Just checking in, man. Thought about your name came up, saw your name on my phone, and I just wondered, how are you doing? And then taking a minute or two to just listen to what they have to say, right? Sometimes people, because of things that have very little to do with me, put me on some different level, right? When I'm just a run-of-the-mill, average, everyday guy trying to live my life as best I can. And so it means something to them, I think, when you take the time to call them and ask them how they're doing and can I be of help in any way to you today, right now?
Yeah.
You never know where that conversation's going to go. Yeah. And if you're committed to being of service and you're committed to, you got to be careful when you say to somebody, how are you doing, right? you got to be committed to hearing the response.
That's right.
Right. And taking the time. So really
That's a
what we
great
need
point.
to do,
Great point.
we need to love each other, man. We need to lift each other up. We need to try to take care of each other.
Yeah.
Right. And I don't want to do that. Right. If I leave it to this, I don't want to do any of that. I want to sit on my couch and watch TV and do nothing. I want to be left alone. I want to isolate. Right. But this, right, and this connection and this gratitude that I feel for the blessings that I have in my life, make it impossible for me to say no. You talked about those parents that were in that room with their photos. Those people changed my life. Yeah. Right. I made a movie, and I was just making a movie, man. Right. I'd love to tell you that I had this great plan. I was just making a movie. I just wanted to tell a story, and I felt obligated to be part of the conversation because I had the blessing of recovery. And what happened was those moms, I met those moms, they couldn't walk away.
Yeah.
They had no choice. Yeah. And every day they get up and fight for you and for me, for your 18-year-old daughter and for my children, right? That maybe if they share their story, that people will make different decisions, to do different things, to take different paths. That's the true sense of a hero.
Yeah.
Right? And they do that. How dare I try to walk away? Yeah. They paid the ultimate price. How dare I get to walk away? And what I did was I try to just make it, I try to give myself an out, right? I said, God, here's what I'm going to do. I'm not going to solicit this activity. I'm not going to go out and try to convince people to have me come and speak and show my movie and do any of that. But what I will do is I will commit to you that I'll just say yes. If people come, like in the movie, right? If you build it, they will come. If they ask, I'm just going to say yes, whatever it is they ask me. If they ask me to be of service, I'll just say yes. And, you got to be careful when you do that. Because I've been in some situations, but I just say yes first. Even though my brain wants to say no, I just say yes, and then I figure it out. And I find the best way for me to get to live the life I live and to live is to be grateful and to be of service. If I can do those two things, then my life is pretty easy.
And I'll add to that as well. So one of my managers in my management company, his name's Steve Wood. He's been doing this forever. He was our tour manager. Paul Geary's my personal manager. His partner is Steve Wood.
Love Paul.
He was,
love Paul.
He was in the road with us for a long time. And Steve has done everyone from Kiss to Aerosmith to you name it, right? He's lived the life, ex-heroin addict, coke, all that stuff. He came from a background where his dad, so here's an interesting story you'll love. So his name is Steve Wood, right? One day he came to me and he says, Sully, you know who my dad is, right? And I said, no. And he goes, it's Ken. And I go, yeah. And he goes, Wood. And I go, yeah. And he goes, say it real quick. I go, Kenwood. Oh, really? Shit. Your dad's Kenwood? Like stereos, washer and dryers, like Kenwood. And I go, what? And so he began to tell me how, as his childhood, he had the opposite of us. He was Rolls Royce to school in England. His dad was too busy for him. His parents were always having parties, and they were the thing, right? I mean, this guy was loaded, and he had a huge name, and it was all that. And because of the abandonment feeling that he probably had, he went to private schools and all that stuff, right? Best of everything. You can have whatever you want, but not my love, right? And so, and I don't think on purpose. I think his dad was just busy and forgot to do that part, right? And so he went down the wrong road and he became bad addict. But he told me he turned his life around now. I think he's on his 30th year sober and that kind of thing. And he said, all the things that I chased my whole life, all the things I wanted, a nice car, a nice house, this, that, and the other thing, fame, success, blah, blah, blah. And you just find yourself chasing. It's selfish, and it's like you're going down that road, right? But until I gave up on that, and I just wanted to fix me and be healthy and be safe, all the things in life that really made a difference were free, right? Like respect and honor and help me out here, self-worth and all that, right? And then all the things that he chased that didn't mean anything or weren't going to fix your life that he was chasing, he ended up getting anyways, because when you least expect it, you kind of get rewarded in a way as well by doing these selfless acts and taking care of yourself first. You take care of yourself first, you're well equipped to take care of everyone else in your life that you love. And that's the one thing with the Wahlbergs that I see. And I think we see it through your shows, we see it through your gestures, we see it through the work that you guys do. The one thing I think there's nobody on this planet that can deny is that the Wahlbergs just know how to give to each other, and you can see the unity in your family, even though I'm sure you guys have had your brawls and everything else that families have, but you can see that true love and connection to each other because you've learned to take care of yourselves. And when you're healthy in that way, mentally and physically, then it's easier for you to be able to take care of the people you love.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think that a lot of what you talk about really comes from my mom, right? That was her thing, man, was like, because she grew up having to take care of her family, her as a child, she really wanted us to take care of each other and to be kind to others, right? And to, like, you can't have all the success and not give back, right? That's not going to work. I don't know where you're going for Christmas, but you ain't coming to my house if you want to be that person, right? Yeah. This is who we are inside. Yeah. We received the kindness from strangers, and now we need to return the favor, and we need to try to take it a step up. And so, we've been blessed. And I'll tell you, man, selfishly, I get a lot of joy out of doing for others. I get a lot of pleasure, and I get it fills my voids, and it gives me self-worth to be the kind of person that wants to be kind and generous to others. Totally. It's a great life, man. It makes my life so much easier. I'm not in that rat race where I'm trying to get. Yep. I'm trying to give.
Yeah. And I want to remind people right now too that are watching that what he's saying is really the key to, like, once you start making these selfless gestures, even if it's just initially because, like, you want to pass time or you want to start the process, you'll find that through that process, sometimes you'll start rehabilitating yourself by getting that self-gratification that you get from helping others and doing these selfless acts. And then all of a sudden, that's the path you start taking on. That's the cycle that starts happening that you become addicted to, in a sense, because you feel yourself healing, you get further away from those problems in a sense, but you find really an outlet that able to satisfy, not sitting in that dark space all the time, So, Jim, listen, man, we're out of time. We got to roll, man, but I just want to say thanks again for coming on, dude. You know how I feel about you. I can't wait for the COVID crap to heal. If anybody's going to send prayers and project things right now, project for this virus to disappear, because I need to, like, reconnect with humans again. I want to shake my boy's hand and hug and kiss my daughter and spend time with the people I love and get back on the road and play music. And I'm sure all you guys in the movie industry, as well as what you do with addiction and recovery and all that, need to get back out and touch people in person again. And I'm sure this has wreaked a little havoc on what you guys do.
Well, you just go, we pivot, got to pivot. Now, what you're doing, right? You have all this time on your hands, right? And you're blessed with not just musical talent and all that other stuff, but you actually have, like, a personality. You're a very likable person, and people connect with you. You could just, go make an album. You could go just make an album, right? Or you could do something different, right? And step into something different and use what you have, your platform, to do something like this, have a conversation like this, a meaningful conversation that maybe somebody will get something out of, right?
Well, I just feel that we're in a position that, people need leadership right now. And they need to hear it from the people that they follow and like for whatever reason, whether it's through film, whether it's through music, whether it's through help. It doesn't matter. There are people that just are good with this because they know what to do and they're strong. And there's people that aren't in that position. And I think right now we need to help be a voice for that. And so, again, thanks for coming on, man. Stay safe, stay healthy down there. I know you're fucking warm in Florida, so I'm not even going to get into that crap.
Woo, I'm playing golf tomorrow.
And Tom Brady's a little closer to you now, you son of a bitch.
Yes, yeah.
How did you make that chess move and know that he was coming
such
your
a
way?
great move. Such a great move for him.
Well, you were ahead of him. You're like, I'm going to reposition myself in Florida, so when Tom comes this way, I'm a little closer.
I'll be here waiting for you.
Him and Gronk play again. I hate it.
Beautiful thing.
Yeah.
All right,
my
brother. Well,
man.
listen, thank you, man. I love you, Sully.
Of course, man. You too. So that's it, everybody. I just want to thank Jim Wahlberg once again for taking the time to come on. We are out of time right now, but please follow Jim at all his social media handles. Again, the links to all his projects. And if you need any kind of assistance, if you're struggling with anything, go to scarsfoundation.org or please reach out to Jim Wahlberg through the Mark Walhberg Foundation. Anything like that will really give you the tools that you need to get through some of these tougher times. So thanks for watching, and we will be back on Tuesday. That's all for now. Peace out.